see if this works. Hey, looks like we're live on YouTube. Today is May 20th, and this is our design and user experience meeting. Before we get into anything on the agenda, we should go around and do some quick introductions. My name is Jen Lampton. I'm joining from Oakland, California. I haven't been doing a lot in design or user experience recently for Backdrop, but I have a bunch of user experience issues I'd love to work on if there was more hours in the day. Let's turn it over to Greg.
I am Greg. Sorry, I'm just filling in that. I'm joining from Greece, usually in Australia, hopefully soon there as well. I've been fiddling with a few UX issues that I will mention in this meeting, and I'm looking for some feedback and guidance. And yeah, passing on to Robert.
I'm Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet, coming to you from Altadena, California, and just interested in UX, so seeing if anything strikes a chord. Passing it to Joseph.
Hi, I'm Joseph from Las Vegas, Nevada, and I have not really been doing any design type things either, since I mostly do back-end stuff, but I'm here to see if there's anything I can help with. Yeah, I think that's everyone.
All right. Since our last theme and user experience related meeting, I think we have a theme initiative update from Luke. So we had an initiative for Backdrop called Ready to Wear, which was trying to make more themes ready directly when you put them onto your site that you could use in production. And Luke has written up a summary of that initiative in the forum. So if you go to the forum, there's a category. There's a link in the agenda. I think the category is initiatives. I'll figure out how to navigate here. Yeah, there's a category called initiatives. And then the first one is most recent comment, official initiative ready to wear. It's the last comment on there where he wrote all of the stuff that has happened in the last year, including at the bottom, there's a bunch of screenshots of themes that are ready to wear, which is pretty exciting. So thanks, Luke, for taking the time to write that up. I'm sure we'll discuss it again in our weekly meetings. And then for Backdrop, the product itself, we have a handful of issues that are tagged as design related issues and a handful of issues that are tagged as user experience related issues. I don't think we've been making any or very much progress on any of the design issues. I haven't been paying attention if we have. But there is one issue that I don't remember where this stands. I think is going to help unblock us for all changes in the future, and that's this long-standing issue about how to make CSS changes safely between core versions. So Backdrop Core had a 1.x release in 2015. It's now 2021. That's been 6 years. And we've been really hesitant to make CSS changes because we're likely to break live sites by doing that. And so for the last 2 or so years, we've been talking about how we can introduce a system into core that would make it possible for us to make CSS improvements to new installs without affecting existing installs. And I think we've landed on a solution that everybody hasn't had any very strong objections to. I'm not trying to say everyone agrees to it, but it is something that I would like to get some more feedback on. I'm going to drop a link into the Backdrop Zulip channel for weekly meetings. But this is issue number 3146 in the GitHub queue if anyone wants to. Oh, that's not the right one. Hold on, too many issues open. It's issue 4167. Okay. If anyone wants to look at that. And then the big takeaway is that we're going to try and add a bunch of body classes. So anytime we add a CSS change, we'll include a new body class, and then the CSS will include that body class as a part of its selector. And then when Backdrop 2 comes out, we'll just go and remove all of those special selectors. So all of it would end up in the base version of Backdrop 2. And then as we add new stuff, we'd start to add selectors again in Backdrop 2. All right, let's see. Tim was advocating or championing this issue to make better defaults for page layouts, particularly in the basis theme. And he has a couple of examples of things that would make it easier for people who are first using Backdrop. I think the big issue is that the core layouts plus basis theme creates an example that is not super common. It isn't what most people want. And so he's trying to find ways to get something that's closer to what most people want. It's a little too stylized and opinionated. I had some alternative recommendations on how we might be able to do that with templates, but all of my recommendations would affect existing sites. And because we don't want to do that, Tim's recommendation included changes that were only configuration and could only be applied to new sites. It does create sort of a messy user interface on the back end, which is what my resistance was to it. But that also, I think, could use some more feedback from opinions for people, whether you think the cluttery admin interface is worth having things closer to where you want them when you start. So this issue is number 4113 in the Backdrop core queue, and he's got some good screenshots in there about the kinds of things he wants moved around. All of the other issues we have on the agenda are not design specifically, but they're related more to user experience. And Greg, I don't know if you want to go through some of these.
Yeah, so I'm not going to add any more. There's so many interesting things to work on. I just added a few ones where either we've done some work, and then a couple of those are yours as well. And then they just had some period of inactivity now because lack of time or reviews. So I would like to keep them here for a few weeks or fortnights, just to draw attention to people that what we sort of like what they think should be prioritized, which one of those, and maybe we can get some feedback by just mentioning them. So these are things that these are the ones that I selflessly sort of like remember from the UX wish list that I have in my mind. So the first one is issue 4410, and this is something that Jen, you've put a pull request for, and it's to get to use the admin theme for the login form and to sort of like have it so that our login page differentiates from the rest of the site, sort of like what WordPress does. I haven't looked at that issue for a long time, but this is related to something that we were discussing privately before we started recording. It's related to a few themes in Drupal that are starting to pick up sort of some traction. And I think that they're doing some good work. So back in November, I posted a few screenshots of how some of those login screens look like. And you can theme them, you can add images, whatever, and there's a dark mode as well. So it would be nice to get some feedback. And I can't remember what the decision was, but I also at some point recommended or suggested that we should explore the idea of using a separate layout, which would allow people to put blocks there and customize it. But I can't remember what the decision was on that. We need to revisit that.
There are a couple of recommendations that made this a little bit more possible. In order to have a layout for these two pages specifically, we could add a context specifically for user login, register, and password pages and provide a default layout out of the box, or we don't have to provide one if we don't want to. But at least that way people will be able to select like is login pages or something as an option, and it would target all three. And that would make it more sensible to put specific blocks on only these pages rather than having to like target by URL and say only put this block on this page or only put this block on this page. So either way, that's a good idea, I think. And then there are a couple of other issues that were problematic. Right now, we have a permission called view administration theme, which would need to be granted to anonymous users in order for them to view this page in the backend theme. But that permission isn't actually being used in core right now. So you can grant that to people, but it doesn't actually control whether they can see the admin theme or not. So I have a separate issue that removes that permission from Backdrop Core. And that created a problem because there could be people in Drupal 7 or in Backdrop that are using that theme themselves for something else. Like, for example, if you built a view and you granted access to that view based on the permission use admin theme, view admin theme, that could be a problem. So we also created a contrib module called view admin theme that provides the permission. And so when we make the update to Backdrop that removes the permission, we would also need to include a note that says, if you are using this permission on your site, here's a contrib module that you can install instead. So it's a little messy. And I'm not sure that can or should be done in 1.x. So I think that's sort of where the question is, like, can we remove something from core that core doesn't use, even though it could be configured to use it? Or is there a way we can automatically detect if it's used or not, and then download and install the module if they have installer on? And then if you can, now you've solved the problem for everyone that has installer configured, but not everyone who might not have installer configured. So it's a little bit of a gray area as to at what point do we think it's safe enough that we can make this change. And if we feel the answer to that is never, then this would have to get pushed to Backdrop 2.
Do we know how common it is for people to use that?
No.
We don't have metrics, so we only make assumptions.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would have guessed, based on my own experience, not very common, but
Okay.
I don't really know.
I feel
like anyone coming from Drupal 7 is likely to have the permission granted because it did do something in Drupal 7.
But it doesn't do anything.
But when they move to Backdrop, if it's not going to do anything for them in Backdrop, there's no reason to retain that unless they had also done something like built a view that used that permission or used another module that used it or something else. So yeah, there could be a bunch of people that have that permission right now. So if we asked for metrics, we would get it, but we wouldn't actually know if it was being used or not because that's configuration specific to any given site or custom code specific for all we know.
that's annoying.
Mhm. So the next issue, let's speed through these just to sort of like say which ones they are and what we need feedback on. Then the next issue that was on my wish list is 5085, and it's a follow-up to the merging of the update pages. This won't affect a lot of people out of the box because it happens in a specific situation. So if you disable the manual self-updates for core, you will see that the system updates page, the unified updates page sort of like splits into two tables. And I don't see any point in that being that way. So I provided a few screenshots that explain it better than my words now. And I would like some feedback. Is it better that way or not? And yeah, there's a pull request available, so you can test. Like even if you can't do code reviews, just test and report back how it feels, if it's better UX or not. And then related to that, so there was a huge chunk of help text that was available there. And what I've done is I used the same UI pattern that we have in the modules listing page and the status report page, where we have a more or less link, which is a toggle basically, and it reveals more information. So that would make it the third place that I can think of in the admin UI where we use that pattern. And so I created issue 5090, so 5090, which I sort of like suggest that we should consider replacing those more or less toggles and the custom JavaScript that we have, which is separate for its module that provides that. And it's basically code duplication. into a details HTML element. So I did file a pull request for that, so you can test and play and see how it feels. The only thing that we need to do there as a subtask is if we decide to go with that, we need to add polyfill for the details element for all the browsers. So we need some testing there. Before I start doing more work, I would like some feedback. But the exciting thing about it is that as part of that issue, I started working on issue 324, which is a really old issue, which is to add the details element in the form API and provide a theme function for it so that Contrib and Core can start using it. So certainly we cannot do what Drupal has done and replace all field sets with details in the 1.x cycle. But if people want to start using it, they can use it. So yeah, I would like some feedback on that. And then
I have a question. In your pull request, did you actually change the status report in the
yes,
modules page and stuff? Okay.
so that issue is about those pages specifically. And if the previous issue that I mentioned does get merged, I'm also going to convert that more or less toggle into using details as part of it. Now, the pull request includes changes that would add details in the form API, which should be outside that issue, which is, as I said, it's just a proof of concept. I put all those things together so that people can test it in the pool PR sandbox. And if they like it, then I'm going to have to work on the older issue, the form API issue first. And then once we have that in, we can move on. But it's working with very, very minimal CSS changes. The details element is working like 99% resembles the functionality that we have with the custom JavaScript that we use, that jQuery. So yeah, that was fun to work with. Then I would like to mention issue 3157, which is the save draft module into Core. Peter BW Pada was advocating for that, but I dragged him into other work-related stuff, so he removed himself from an advocate. If I finish with working with the other issues early, I would like to advocate for that if Peter doesn't change his mind and comes back to it. And then related to that is issue 3122, which is pretty close. So this is about separating the help text for the publish options. It's pretty close. I can't remember if there was feedback, recent feedback. Jen, did you have a look at that? Bear with me. So I think that I filed a pull request against yours. I can't remember what I've done. It's been a few days. But I think we're pretty close. And Andy Gozella has done a review. The only thing that they pointed out was because it's changing the structure of the form elements, maybe the nesting is not as before. And should that be a concern for people, overriding that form? I think not as well, but I would like some feedback from others.
Yeah. The form API structure is not technically part of the API, but it is possible that somebody wrote like a form alter module that would not work anymore, targeting these elements in their previous position. What we could do is do a quick scan of Contrib and see if we can find any form options sticky or form options promote in their current locations, and that will give us a good idea of what Contrib is currently doing to the node form. It won't tell us about custom stuff, but I think that if we determine that like there's nothing in Contrib that's doing it, that might be safe enough for us to be like, okay, well, even if there are a few people who have custom solutions, the majority of people won't be affected by this, and it will be fine. Yeah,
it would be an indicator. So by the way, the status of this issue is RTBC. So we basically need a core committer, just have a look and see if it's acceptable the way that it is now.
Okay, so is this most recent pull request is by me, so I can't do the code review, but I think you could do it.
I think I worked on it as well, so I can't do it. But it is RTBC.
Yeah. It would just be good if we could get
made.
Yeah,
those in there.
you're right. If it's RTBC, a core committer will probably find it.
Yep. And then the last thing on the agenda here was issue 3146, which is, oh yes, I love that
So
one.
I once
He's smiling
again
as well. Yeah.
was using module filter on a Drupal 7 site, and it made me really mad. And I was like, why do people do this? What do they want? And I think that there are still some features that module filter offers that are not in Backdrop Core. And I would love to make Backdrop Core good enough that people won't want module filter for it. And in order to do that, we need to add back some of the missing functionality. So checkboxes so you can see the difference between core only modules, Drupal only modules, or even custom modules. And then there was another issue, parallel issue, that gave you a search by project. So right now we group them by project. It would be good if you could search by project too, and that would give us the option to remove that grouping by project if we wanted to in the future. I think they and there's I think the other issue also recommends sorting them alphabetically.
Yes.
So if we're going to remove the sort and grouping that we have now, we need to provide a way for people to actually get that functionality back. And so that would be by giving them a way to filter or sort the modules back how they are. So
I can't remember if this was related at all with the Doc Wilmot's more data in .info files. It could be.
Yeah, because if we allow people to use more tags, because right now there's a screenshot in this issue. It's the same one. Yeah, so in the top issue, there's a screenshot of like all of the filters. Right now we have only a search by keyword, but tag right now only populates with the project line in the info file. But if we added a tag line to the info file, people could make it so that web form could come up under web form, but it could also come up under survey. So we could get more things that people might look for in there. So like views might come up, and if you had a views extension module, it might come up on views, but it might also want to come up under user interface. And so it just gives you the ability to provide more ways for people to find your module.
Yep. All-time favorite as well.
All right.
So this is a handful of issues in the agenda with links there. If anyone can sort of like spare some time to just provide feedback for those to get these moving again. We also meant to have a meeting to sort of like prioritize things. Maybe it would be a good chance to sort of like include those or some of those.
Okay. It is time. It is 2:01. So before I stop this line screen, I just want to see if anyone else has anything particular to add. Robert, I know you've been very quiet all meeting. I know Greg and I are both famous for doing all the talking, so I wanted to make sure you had an opportunity to say something if you wanted to.
Nothing particular. I would echo favorableness towards the last couple of UI changes, the module filtering change. And actually on the details, there was another topic that came up some weeks back, which was how to give additional information, for example, on the text filters, I think was the context it came up in. We don't need a big block of text filter, but we need to make it easy for people to see more information in lots and lots of places if they want. And so I was just wondering if this details would be a way forward to accomplish that goal. And if so, I strongly endorse it.
I think that I've filed a pull proof of concept pull request for that using a field set at the top of the page, but I can't remember. I haven't revisited that issue in a long time. So it was adding a huge piece of help text, but it was keeping it collapsed so that it's not annoying for people. But if people didn't understand how that page works, they could expand it, read it, and then hide it.
So a detailed element would be better for that because field sets are supposed to be on forms. And this page, that would be great.
There was a comment that was brought up that we could do that now using a title attribute, but that requires a hover to access, and touch this interfaces don't support that. So having something visible that you can act on to bring up a big chunk, and being able to do that in multiple places on a single web page so that you only have to expand the part that you need would be really helpful.
Yeah.
I just dropped a link into Zulip too. I think it's been a long time since we've talked about it, but it was specifically adding a tooltip, which very closely matches that thought of like, if we could just put something there that had more information in it that was not obtrusive to everyone, but was there if you needed it. And so I think this was recommending another form API element or a form API attribute that you could add to anything, and it would provide that kind of information. It could be really useful.
Yeah, all good ideas. By the way, that field set, expanding collapsing field set with help text is a pattern that is being used in WordPress. So yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap up this meeting, and we'll start our weekly developer check-in. I'm going to turn off the live stream. Thanks everybody for